Hi, I'm Mesha. Welcome to Every Life is a Story. You know, I'm always telling you it's our life, our story. We can write ourselves a great one. And it's true we don't have control over every part of our story. But the parts we do have control over, those are the parts that we get to write. And those are the parts that really determine the outcome. They're the most important parts. And I ran across someone who I just knew there was a story there. And folks, boy, is there a story there. And there's a story to getting him here. It's been a journey. But number three, the third attempt, that was the charm. He's here today with us. And I just can't wait for you all to meet and find out the story behind Mr. Fred Brown. So, Fred, tell us your story.
Hello. It's an honor. And when it was mentioned that it's been a little bit of a journey getting here, only things called technicalities in video and so forth happen. But if you keep trying, like anything in life, you will get where you want to be. So, on that note, um, I sent a bio in and I did not have one. I mean, this type of bio because I have not worked now in 18 years because of a medical problem, which I will get to, but I don't want to start there. I want to start somewhere else. So I mentioned that I would just jot something out as a bio. And as I did so, I began having fun with it because different decades of my life began to come back. Things that happen, and so often we have snapshots of items that happen in life. But in this case, it was a very satisfying thing to do where I figured I would come up with a half a page or so, and I believe it was like 3 pages.
It's
So
amazing. Your story is amazing.
and somehow I'm still here.
Uh, I
No, let
really
me
keep
let
going.
me
You're not
go ahead.
you're not done yet, Fred. You're going to keep going.
I'm going to keep going because I'm here. We all are here for a reason. We
Yes.
may not know what that reason is until later in our life, maybe late in our life, but in all seriousness, a number of years ago that came to me, and that both is something with my background and my religion, as well as just it makes a lot of sense. And let me start there. And what that is simply we have are here on earth. And the philosophy is very simple. The philosophy is arrive here, and it's time to move on to wherever that place is, have we left this world just a little bit better? And I never knew that until a few years back as I was working through some things that I will talk about in a moment. So let me kind of sort of go back
Yes.
several months, years. And what I started with my bio was at 10 years of age. I had my father's 8 millimeter movie camera, and I always was fascinated with movies and going to movies and seeing movies. And I had certain heroes within the film industry at 10. And I began just shooting different things. They were not edited together, they were just uh, lots of different things from uh, trying to get a close up of an ant just to see what it did, not realizing in order to do that, you need certain lenses. So
Mhm.
I was kind of knew nothing about this. And as I got older and as I became a teenager, I was very fortunate to meet a fellow that was in the motion picture industry doing industrial films. And in a way, he took me under his wing. And what I mean by that is he began, video was something that was in television stations
Right.
and not something that's as common as today. Certainly no internet back then. And he took me under his wing in a sense, and I began learning a lot about filmmaking and editing and so forth. And I worked with him. He hired me for certain productions that were done, and that was a great, great training period. And once I graduated from school, an opportunity came about that, being young, I thought, whoa, this is a quote, neat thing to do. And that was a different fellow hired me to be a part of the crew. It was three people. It was a boat captain, a cameraman, and me. And what the job was going down the Mississippi River. The sponsors were the people that made the houseboat, the engines, the electronics, and so forth. They paid the bill. And we started in Minneapolis, where the Mississippi River, Mississippi River was where we were going,
Mhm.
down there. And it should have taken, I don't know, should have taken X number of days or a couple of weeks. Took the whole summer because, like in video, there are things called technical problems with engines or
Yes.
electronics. Anyway, I had an exciting time. I was, I believe, 19 or 20 years of age. And we were on this boat. I mean, we stayed on the boat or we stayed in certain cities and in hotels. But basically, we lived on that boat. And three guys and one fellow was truly a licensed captain of, it could
Hmm.
could handle the boat, the houseboat. And Bob, the cameraman's name, he too taught me a tremendous amount of things that I never knew, including doing aerials out of a helicopter by hand holding the camera, not with what they have today.
Right.
So this was an exciting time of going down the Mississippi River. And from that, we got to the end point, New Orleans, and the job was done. I finished with that job, and that led to another job that was in Phoenix, which was way, 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 way back when the NRA had a great reputation. Specifically, what this was an international shooting competition that was held in Phoenix. So you had numerous countries from around the world that participated. And back then, we did not have so-called Russia. We had the Union of Socialists, uh, Socialists, the
I'm
USSR. That's what I
USSR.
remember.
I'm too.
And so, meeting people from around the world. So it was a great opportunity. This led to a position little ways past that, working for going back to the fellow that um, I had met first, who took me under his wing, and he had a very good client that was local, international client. And he did not only film work for them, but he also did items for their various stage programs, their recruiting programs, their uh, launches of product and so forth. And now, and I will mention the name of this. This was going back into the 70s with Tupperware. And
Tupperware.
back then, it was referred to as Tupperware home parties.
Right.
Today, I believe they refer to it because it's a independent or it's a public company on its own as Tupperware Company. But
Mhm.
during the days of Tupperware home parties, we had lots of projects that we did because we learned that if you recognize people for accomplishments that they do, it does wonders. Money is fine, but when you just recognize somebody, in this case on stage, or even going up, the CEO of the company was a one-on-one person,
Yes.
and he had a tremendous capacity to, if he needed to speak to you one-on-one, he never got excited. He just, whatever the message was, good, bad, or whatever, mostly recognition of the different people in the sales force.
Hmm.
And one real quick project that we did that, again, I had a lot of fun doing. And again, I'm in my 20s. I did meet a girl that became a girlfriend, that became a girlfriend slash wife. We've been together for 46 years now
Oh,
and married for 46, 40. We're working on our 44th year. Um, and jumping real quick and then jumping back, 4 daughters.
yes.
And that was that was Frances came with, when I met her, she, and I will get back to the story, but when I met her, she said to me the second day that I met her, and I asked her to dinner, she said, I want you to know, very honest, that I come with 2 kids. And Laura was 1.5, and Milena at that point was about 3. And what did I do? I said, okay, like, anyway, it was worked for many, many years, and we added to the group by having 2 additional daughters.
Wonderful.
But going, it children teach you a lot. They teach you a tremendous amount. And there are times within childhood that you say, I can't wait until this time is up. Problem is, don't ever say that because that time will be up real quick. Time has a way of just moving ahead with or without you, and you better get on that train. And you suddenly will look not at little infants or young kids, they will be looking at you at eye level or above
Yeah.
because you're grown women, and that time went very quick. But let me quickly go back to one of the projects that we did was we had the sales force sign a balloon, just a latex balloon. They
Mhm.
signed it, they mailed it into headquarters. And one night when we had the 100,000 balloons, the employees of the company at that time, 350, 400 employees, stayed up all night inflating these helium balloons. And they were filled and put into nets.
Mhm.
And it took literally the whole night for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I will cut to the end of it. The end of it is the president of the company is in a hot air balloon and he is getting ready to do his last part of what this is all about. And at that point, he delivers his lines. The balloon is pulled down. He comes out. I go in, same color suit, and I have a 16 millimeter camera with me. And I went up with 100,000 balloons that were released around me.
Wow.
That was beautiful. beautiful, beautiful. And I have that memory right now of what happened during that time. One other, and then I will move on with Fred's life, my life. That is the same company, Tupperware, had, and each year they would have a competition between the United States and Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, which was referred to as TEAM. And this project, same thing, instead of mailing in a signed piece of a balloon, they sent in a square of fabric, signed their name on it, mailed it in, and we had various seamstresses sew this together into a 450-foot banner. Again, a film was shot around it, and the end of it was the competition between Tupperware US and Tupperware Team Europe and so forth. And the way it was handled is I flew to London with the cameraman that I worked with here.
Mhm.
And this big box was delivered to the office, to the managing director of this part of this region of the world.
Right.
And it was laid out. Their building was a very old office complex, the red brick and so forth, but it
Mhm.
happened to be on a golf course. And what we were able to do is to lay this whole banner out on the one of the fairways that was arranged for.
Mhm.
And it was just an exciting time. There were several of these things that we did, and somehow I was named at Tupperware when I was an employee. Rather than working in sales promotion, I was given the title of Director of Miscellaneous, which was an interesting title because I had a habit of, if something needed to be done, and I knew it needed to be done, but nobody was doing it innocently, I would fill in and do it. And
Mhm.
that brought some intriguing things into my life also, especially when we had a conference coming up in Acapulco that following year.
Right.
And there was some challenges that we ran into with the hotel and so forth. So since I was involved with working with the hotels and booking rooms and so forth as part of sales promotion, I ended up flying down on a Thanksgiving weekend on one of the planes that the company had, except like video and like other things, we landed in Mexico City to pick up the manager of the Tupperware plant, manufacturing plant, who knew the world of Mexico. And the plane had a problem, a technical problem, and we had to fly commercial from Mexico City to Acapulco. And I
Mhm.
remember when I got back to the States and back to the office, the man that I reported to said to me, I got a call from the president of the company, Joe, and he said, why is Fred in Acapulco and he broke one of the Lears? And it was a mechanical problem, but it was a funny line because
What is
that
the
type of stuff has happened to me throughout my life. And I don't necessarily or purposely look for issues or problems, challenges. They find me or somehow I find them and I go after it. And after Tupperware, which was involving the filmmaking and hotels and staging and putting on conventions, I made a decision to leave the company and to start our own company, meaning my wife, Frances, and I. And so, for approximately a 10-year period, We had a convention company, and we did small meetings to large meetings, the
Mm-hmm.
staging, the writing in some instances, hiring writers, and a lot of different elements to it. And all of these programs, like with Tupperware, involved a lot of named entertainers that they would have for the last night. And again, it was very colorful. It was just, I was trying, I think, probably not knowing it, but to make my life as exciting. I'm going through this thing one time, I guess,
Yeah.
to make my life as enjoyable and fun as possible.
Right.
So we had the company, and this was a period for 10 years. And then we ran into something called a recession, and companies cut back on meetings and on and on and on. And so from there, I did a variety of jobs from retail to working in a bookstore to one company, a department store. I remember selling men's suits that I knew nothing about, but you do what you have to do. And if you don't do what you have to do, you're going to run into some issues somewhere along the way.
Right.
And from that, the economy got better, and I was hired by another direct sales company that handled primarily children's books. It was a British company, but they began a setup here in the United States, based here in Florida. And from that, I was hired doing some of the same things that I was very accustomed to with the video and the staging and the booking of hotel rooms. And there was a lot of travel involved with this, which when I started in my early 20s, I thought, well, this is really cool. Every job's going to be like this, working for a corporation. I
Right.
did learn later on that's not necessarily the truth. So I
No.
worked for this book company for several years, and that led to a position with another direct sales company, which sold, it was a German company. And German people are wonderful, delightful people that I met, but very, very, very detailed in whatever they do. They're very meetings, and not short 30-minute meetings, but they go on and they go on. But there was a reason for these things.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere within this time period, now I'm going to get to the part that wasn't so much joy and fun. And that is, excuse me, I ended up developing neck pain. And I did go to a doctor, and it was treated very conservatively with physical therapy. Some diagnostic tests were done. And this went on for approximately a year or so. And it came down to having had numerous diagnostics that I had in my neck a 3 disc, which are the cushions between the vertebra, that were disintegrating,
Mm-hmm.
along with other nasty things like bone spurs. And this all was doing something which is referred to as impinging upon nerve endings. And that's what creates tremendous, I say, discomfort. I try not to use the word PAIN, pain, because that can place something negative in your subconscious. And I have tried to share that thought with doctors and nurses and people at labs when they're taking blood. Instead of saying, well, you're going to feel a pinch or it's going to hurt for a moment, I say, wait a minute.
Don't say that.
How about if you say you're going to feel to the patient touch and pressure, touch and pressure? Some
Brilliant.
do it, some don't. This was something I had learned many years ago from somebody that I had been seeing for hypnosis. And he taught me some very intriguing things that I have used throughout my life. So, what I had done, getting a second opinion, the second surgeon agreed with the first, is I had a discectomy, which simply is they make an incision, they go in, they put in my case, rather than using artificial disc as they're using today in certain instances,
Mhm.
they remove some bone from the hip, they put it in, they cleaned up the spurs and other things,
Right.
and he closes me up. And again, I had this, I healed from the trauma, being opened up, having surgery. But why I did this was for the discomfort. And rather, this is a couple of months later, the discomfort going this way, the discomfort began to go even further.
Yeah.
And to add to that, the surgeon was doing, which is normal in a post operative scenario, doing x rays to make sure everything looks right. It looked right, with the exception of the surgeon saying to me, simple fusion plate that tall with 6 screws, all made out of titanium. The screws were beginning to come out. That
Wow.
was not something that I really wanted to hear, but I
No.
listened, and he kept doing x rays over a given amount of time. And approximately 13 months from the first surgery, he had to go in and retrieve this one piece of hardware and the
Mhm.
6 screws.
Wow.
And that part was successful. The part that I learned later on,
Wow.
before he closed me, sutured me, and all the stuff that goes with that, he looked and he put in his operative notes that the patient is solidly fused, because the whole objective here is, while the bone and
Mhm.
tissues are healing, that you need something solid, which is a titanium plate. And he said everything was solidly fused. He closes me up. I healed from that trauma, except as I heal, going a couple of months past the second surgery, the discomfort is now really beginning to escalate. And something, whoever sees this, if you ever have to have any type of surgery, most certainly get a second opinion, and in certain instances, 3 opinions. It is well worth it. What happened is the surgeon said, there's nothing more I can do for you. And I also was seeing another doctor, a neurologist. He introduced me, the two of them, without knowing it, introduced me to somebody here in town who was a board certified pain management physician. And
Awesome.
this was something that when I started, which would have been in January of 1998,
Wow.
wasn't as common as it is today. There are only 5 or 6 physicians with that specialty.
Mhm.
So this doctor, who was superb, took me off all of the medicines that I was on and began putting me on certain other medicines. One of those medicines was a very low dose opioid, long acting.
Mhm.
And the objective there, because he had read all the notes, he had seen the MRIs, the CAT scan, the x rays, he knew all of this. The objective is, for certain patients, that when you introduce a long-acting opioid, it releases a certain quantity of medicine throughout the day or throughout the evening. So you're taking 2 pills a day.
Hmm.
And this worked for some time. And in addition to that, he put me on a couple of other medicines to help to control spasms that were happening. And things were okay, meaning they were somewhat stable. He did a number of, through the years, through 2 decades, in fact, he
Wow.
did a number of procedures on me. And the procedures were simply from epidurals to other types of things called facet injections, which you're putting a little bit of a steroid
Hmm.
medicine in there, not to solve the problem, but to try to lower the symptoms
Right.
of the inflammation. And
Right.
this is what he did until the year 2005. He said, Fred, I want to refer you only for an opinion to this man who is a neurosurgeon, just to get an opinion.
Okay.
So my wife Frances and I go trucking over. No, we go set the appointment up. We go. He has the film, the most recent MRI, and
Mhm.
he says to me, Mr. Brown, after introducing himself, I've looked at your MRIs, and I believe that at one level, which was cervical 6-7, you're not fused. And there's only one way to prove this, which was doing a CAT scan.
Wow.
CAT scan was ordered. I came back we went back to the office. Unfortunately, Mr. Brown, I was right. This fellow specialized in the spine, not
Hmm.
so much brain surgery, but specifically the entire spine.
Uh-huh.
And he said, this is what I recommend. Whether I do the work or you go somewhere else, that really does not matter to me. But I believe that if you don't have something done, a procedure, a surgical procedure, you're going to go into paralysis. This is my
Oh,
professional opinion. That was not a fun thing to hear.
no.
That was, I remember right now looking into his eyes and he was looking into mine and he's telling me this. And I must have had a blank stare, whatever. The outcome of that is I asked him who he would recommend for second opinions. He gave me a name in Miami and he gave a name to somebody in Atlanta. I make an appointment with the doctor in Atlanta who had a high reputation. He also was a professor at Emory University.
Hmm.
So in December of '05, my brother and I go trucking up to Atlanta. We fly up. My brother, because at that point in time, the disc for x-rays and MRIs and so forth were not as common. So
Yes.
my poor older brother was carrying approximately 20 pounds worth of film in a
Oh,
little
no. Yeah.
case that we got. And I met this doctor. He was delightful. He walks in and he has the chart, which were the fax notes from the fellow here.
Hmm.
And he walks in with the chart and he said, you have the best neurosurgeon in Florida. That was a great thing to hear.
Yeah,
The
that's
outcome, the outcome of that was he agreed with the doctor here. I can do it here in Atlanta, but why? I have full trust in this physician. So we now go back home, and in 2006,
hmm
specifically May of 2006, in fact, May 2nd and 5th, what I had were 2 operations.
right.
Wasn't fun.
No.
Thank goodness for my dear girlfriend slash wife, Frances, because she was a delightful, wonderful, wonderful advocate for me. And on a Tuesday, I had an anterior surgery here. 3 days later, I had a posterior, which is in the back, surgery. And rather than a fusion plate like this, I ended up having two fusion plates plus two rods plus two cross pieces. And when you look at an x-ray, the screws look like the same type, they're titanium, but
Mm-hmm.
they look exactly like you would put wallboard up with. And they're at all different angles. And you look and you think, who's that guy? And then you realize that's me. So he did this work. He put Humpty Dumpty back together anatomically, but the but is that after I healed from these surgeries, and it took a while,
It's two
the
back to back. Yeah.
yeah, the pain, once again, the discomfort
Of course.
didn't stay or go like this. It began to escalate.
Yeah.
When you go into any surgery, there are always the benefit versus the risk. And remember that whoever sees this is a benefit versus a risk. There are times you must do something invasively. And if you get those second or third opinions, as I mentioned, you will be better off. And there are times to not do surgeries, and there are times to do them. And so I went back to my pain doctor, and he did what he could. He at
Sure.
that point in time, with when you're dealing with opioids,
Mm-hmm.
no problem. By the way, at this in the calendar of what's going on today with opioid medicines, but
Right.
he had me on two different ones, and the best way to say it is he kept me stable.
Yes.
And to this day, that's the best way that I can describe myself.
Stable.
Several years back, as I said, I have not worked outside the home since in 18 years. That transition was very, very odd to me because I thoroughly love to work.
Sure.
And to go from working, working, working to not going somewhere to work was a big number in my head to,
Well, and your
to
life was so interesting, and you did such exciting, fun things, and such creative things. I mean, you had such outlets for who you are. So it had to be
and
hard.
it has been very hard. It's very hard having grandchildren that say, we're going to just throw baskets in a basketball hoop, not being able to do that. But one of the most important things that I made a decision about,
Mm-hmm.
and this was several years back, this is how my life is for
Yes.
whatever reason. And for years, I would ask myself a simple question: why? Why this? Why this? Why having 3 knee surgeries that led to 5 knee surgeries? Why just events of life without any, all of this started with no trauma. It wasn't an auto accident
Right. Yeah.
in the spine. It wasn't any trauma. It just happened.
Yeah.
And I realized, and I really want to share this with everybody that does see the video, and that is the question of why. We can ask ourselves, well, why is this happening to me? And you may get an answer. but more than likely you're not going to. Why waste the energies
Yes,
asking yourself, well, why, why?
exactly.
Because you probably, in where we are on this earth,
Yeah.
to use a Woody Allen phrase, when you no longer need your claim ticket for the cleaners, that we're moving on to wherever that might be, you'll probably never have answers then either.
Mm.
So, as a chronic pain patient for 22 plus years now, almost 23, I decided to become a, a pain advocate. And it was a pain advocate for pain patient rights.
Yes.
Because when I chose to do this, and it's all me, I realized several things. And this is where real being serious. And
Yes.
that is, I learned something that I try to use every day, which is diversion of the mind.
Yes.
Diversion of the mind is talking
Absolutely.
right now on camera. There's discomfort, but I am engaged in doing this video to
Yes.
share my life, to share my thoughts. I am not thinking of Fred the patient, I'm thinking of Fred as the advocate. What can I say that I do myself that perhaps could benefit each of you? Some of these things may work, some of them may not work. And if I may, I would like to just add a couple of others. Excuse me.
Fred, you're making my point for the show. You're making my whole point about the show. If we share our stories, we end up not only helping ourselves because we do divert ourselves from what's going on with us, but we help everybody else by sharing because there's somebody out there that needs to hear our story. So you're making my whole point. So you just go right on, Fred. Keep
There's,
talking.
there's a tremendous amount of truth in what I said in the very beginning. I have been very honored, and I sincerely mean that I was asked to do this. And I believe in the advocacy work that I've done for several years, and the definition of my advocacy. I've done a lot of writing. I've
Mhm.
sent it to various publications. Uh, little over a year and a half ago, I made a presentation. It wasn't just speaking, it was being on the agenda for an FDA hearing. It was referred to as the Opioid Steering Committee at the FDA in Silver Springs, Maryland, right
Mhm.
outside of Washington. And it was a legitimate chronic pain patient speaking to several doctors on this panel with an audience that had physicians, but primarily they too were pain patients.
Wow.
What was happening during this time is doctors were being blamed for what's referred to as
Yes.
the opioid crisis. I
Yeah.
can assure you, I'm saying this very honestly and truthfully, the physicians did not cause the opioid crisis. Yes, we're physicians that created these things in Florida, the pill mills. They were greedy people that money was far more important than helping people. We got rid of them. We meaning the various legal professions, prosecutors, etc. And we got them out of here. And that was one problem. The other problem is certain doctors, yes, they did overprescribe, meaning they gave maybe a few extra opioid tablets or capsules that
Right.
were too much. But it is proven by the CDC. See,
Yes.
the CDC in March of 2016 came out with what's referred to as the opioid guidelines for prescribing.
Yes.
The unfortunate part is they had no pain doctor, no board certified pain medicine or pain management physician on that committee.
Does
There
that
was a lot of, go ahead, please.
does that make any sense at all?
Absolutely zero sense. And what this did, it
Yes.
hurt many, many, many people
I
to the
believe.
point that in the advocacy work, because I get a lot of different emails from a lot of different
Yes.
professional sites, from anesthesia to pain medicine news and on and on. And what happened is physicians across the United States began to get scared. They felt this was not a guideline. What this was a law. Well, I better cut back on my prescribing. Doesn't matter that the patient legitimately, whatever the problem is, needs this medicine. So they began to lower the dose, and people began to have major problems.
Yes.
There were certain instances that occurred where different pain groups across the country did not do it as legally you have to now. They would say to a patient, I'm sorry, you're no longer part of this group. And if a patient through time was on a very high regimen of opioids and suddenly they could not get it, other physicians would not take them on. One of the things that there were two things that happened, and I'm being very serious. One, they went to things called street drugs, things like heroin. Today, there's heroin mixed with a make believe drug called fentanyl. The pharmaceutical type of fentanyl is an excellent medicine for physicians to use.
Yes.
This junk is imported from the Far East. Greed is involved with people. It seems like it's a terrible business model. You're killing off your market, but
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
I
Yeah.
think they're somewhat sick people. Um, but the need of a legitimate pain patient, chronic pain patient, went to street drugs. The other thing that happened, and this began in 2016,
Mhm.
the suicide rates
Yes.
began to escalate.
Yes.
People could no longer handle what was happening. And yes, suicide is an answer, but it's not really the best answer. There's always an alternative. And when one lives in a disease of chronic pain, and it is a disease,
Yes.
your mind is, you're upset, you're nervous, um, stressed because your medicine you can no longer get. You're going to go into withdrawals. You might die from that if you're at a certain level. This is ugly stuff,
Very
but
ugly.
it's very, very true. So, what happened in the 2016 CDC guidelines, there were a lot of errors, there was a lot of political influences that happened. 2 years later, in 2018, approximately the spring of 18, the CDC revised part of this and came out very discreetly, by the way, we made a mistake with the numbers. It was something like 40 plus thousand people in the original report died of prescription opioids. They came out 2 years later and said, no, no, we're wrong. It was in the 14,000 neighborhood. The
Yeah.
balance were from street drugs. The problem is, and I had said this, I brought this one issue up at the FDA meeting. The number of people, because of that guideline that came out with all these errors, there are many, many people that are no longer with us. And I try not to blame, but I would say these people need to take responsibility. The CDC began some of this, but then legislators, our congressional people, senators felt, well, we must do something. Opioid.
No.
Heroin is an opioid. It's an illegal substance in the United States,
Right.
Schedule 1 drug. They would not understand, the legislators and the media, that yes, some people died from an overdose of prescription opioids, but at the same time, the writing of prescription opioids has been going like this.
Right.
The overdose deaths have been going like this, and the suicide deaths, not just in the VA, but in the general public, have been escalating, which proves one component here proves it is not the prescribing or over prescribing by physicians. And I can only say this information came out from a second part of the CDC, but it's not made public. So what I've done in this advocacy work, I joined an all-volunteer organization, which is called ATIP, the Alliance for the Treatment of Intractable Pain. Intractable pain is a condition that cannot be corrected. And whatever the problem, the medical clinical issue is, cannot be corrected, and a person can be treated under palliative care.
Right.
Palliative care does not have to necessarily mean the end of life. Certainly, it is part of that through hospice.
Sure.
But there are also people that are in palliative care that have problems, and they do need medicines. And let me say this, I will be the first one to say, not all patients, not all people in pain need long-term opioids. There's something called, and I won't go into my medical talk, but there's acute pain.
Sure.
You break your leg, you hurt yourself, you cut yourself, acute pain. And for instance, in the state of Florida now, based upon a July 2018 law, as in other states, you have a surgical procedure and the physician can only write for a 7-day supply of medicine. If more is needed, they have to clinically have a reason to write for a little bit more. I don't agree with it, but that's how the law is. With chronic pain in the state of Florida, the prescriptions say non-acute pain. Chronic, in my case, chronic neck and back pain. And the way it is set up in the state of Florida, that is accepted by the Florida Board of Medicine, the Florida Pharmaceutical organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to, and I did make a couple of notes because a lot of things float in and out of my head all day long, and a lot of times all night long. But I just wanted to make sure that I have to wear these to read. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned the why. It's not worth it in most cases to ask it.
Yes.
Two would be humor,
Humor.
humor, comedy, humor, making a joke, watching a television program, a movie, a book, anything to get your mind off of thyself and into reading a book, watching a movie, a play, taking, if you're able to, a walk,
Yes.
be great, if that's possible. The diversion of the mind, as I mentioned, vital.
Yes.
Reading a book can take your mind into places you've never been. And it can successfully, it might not be 100%, but it can successfully help with dealing and coping with the condition you have.
Yes.
I remember printing some cards, some business cards. One of the items that was on it is a patient in writing. It says, a patient says, quote, I'm in chronic pain. And then on the business card, I put dot, dot, dot. So my point was, I will accept anybody that states they are in pain. I will accept you as long as nothing comes up that shows perhaps otherwise.
Sure.
And so the saying was simply, I accept that you have the discomfort, the severe pain. What can you do about it? That's the whole reason that I wrote that line. Um, and I will tell you, like in life, so many things do not come easy.
No.
When you're in any type of disease, I'm talking chronic pain, there's lots and lots and lots of other diseases and illnesses and problems and things. And items just don't always come easy. You have to figure out. I remember somebody, a physician, years and years ago, told me, think of how water goes down a hill.
Yes.
It may run into pebbles and rocks and mud and everything, but water going down, always find a way to seep through. Use the same theory. What can I do as a patient to help my life, to help me better? And I'm not just talking medicines. Medicines can most certainly be something that's very advantageous to use, but there can be lots of other things, other modalities. You can have medical massage. You can have the use of physical therapy or occupational therapy. Um, I'm going to say something, and I'm not ashamed. I have no problem letting this out, and that is psychotherapy or some form of
Sure.
counseling.
Yes.
Because when all of this really began, specifically not being able to work, there were other issues that were happening in our lives and in my wife and our family's life. And on top of that was how I was feeling. And fortunately, I do believe I was blessed with all of my medical players. I met a licensed practicing social worker that is a counselor. And I have seen this person not as frequently as I did in the beginning.
Right.
But do not be afraid of this so-called stigma of
Yeah.
therapy,
Right.
mental illness or emotional illnesses. We all can run into problems. Seek help.
Absolutely.
If you do not have insurance or organizations, Catholic social services, Jewish family services, and there are other organizations in many communities across the nation that can help in one form or another when it comes to counseling. Do not be ashamed of that. Do not be ashamed. And somewhere way back when, there was a stigma with emotional disorders or just being upset, being depressed.
Yes.
Trust me, when this all happened, depression was right next to me and right in me. And it took a long time and medication to begin to get me to who you're seeing today. And who the therapist saw on day one and who he sees today is a totally different person. And there was a lot of hard work, there were a lot of decisions that had to go into this. But please, if you have any type of part of your life that you feel a sense of depression and it continues, do not hesitate seeking help. There is no embarrassment with that. That is no weakness to your character.
Absolutely.
Please accept that from me as a patient and a human and somebody that's trying to help. Going back to what I said earlier, what can I do in my life that can make this world a little bit better than when I check out, than when I arrive? This might be it. There might be other things. I am looking at today, living in the moment as best that I can. And trust me, you might see Fred like this. I do have limitations. I have limitations, and I had to learn to set lines. I cannot do certain things, or I need to lay down, or whatever was necessary. It doesn't come overnight. You must work at it.
Yes.
And I can just say, uh, as a pain patient, it has not been an easy journey. I have a wife that is a wife. I say girlfriend is a whole history because we met with two kids, so we did not have the opportunity. We're dating now, being married, we're backwards. Anyway, remember humor, you gotta
Got
add
it.
humor.
Yeah.
But life has its challenges, and you can call them problems, you can call it whatever you so choose to, but try to live in this moment, because if you don't know, especially today. Today, the world is a totally different place than when I was younger, when
Yes.
my kids were younger, when we were growing up. It today in 2020, the 21st century, well, we have all this magic medicines that we can solve problems with. Today, we don't have that magic medicine with this
Pain.
coronavirus
Yeah.
that's taking place in uh, April of 2020.
Right.
And all I can say is keep yourself as healthy as you can as well as you can, the right foods, whatever you can do with movement, if you can walk, if you can just walk around the house, if that's all that you can
Do it.
do it. Because movement can do wonderful things, both physically and also mentally. And I can just say that I have learned a great deal from the life experiences that I've talked about. There has been a lot of fun in it. There still has been joy, and that's a word, just two words. What joy do I have in my life right now, today? Here, I have a family, I have a wife, I have my kids, I have grandchildren, and I always miss the number, but it's 11 great grandchildren. We
Wow.
have a large family. Live in the moment because you do not know what's around the corner. It's an old phrase, but just believe that I should live as best I can today. And at the end of the day, I guess in my case, I look for what's coming tomorrow and the day after. And I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I plan to be here as long as I can, as long as I can um, remain as healthy as I can. I just I just want to say a lot of people can help you if you're a patient. A lot of people can help, but most of the time it comes down to you having to do the work, whatever it is, whatever it might be, and you make that decision. I have met patients, I have spoken to patients that are active, that are living their lives to the best of their ability. They live in legitimate chronic pain, but they live their life. I also have spoken to people, met people in a way they're giving up. This is certainly their choice. This is their decision. I try never to tell people. I try to share things with people. One thing I did forget,
Okay,
and
then
and
we'll wrap up, Fred.
I'm guilt. I sometimes am guilty myself that what I'm going to show, and perhaps this is a good way to leave this. That is, if you need to get angry, get angry. It's a human response that we have. But trust me, take it and let go of it as soon as you can. Because if you don't let go of it, the only person that's going to be hurt is you. Please remember that. Please.
Fred, you are just such a joy. You need your own show. We need the Fred show. That's what we need because you are incredible. And you left out stuff too. You left out inventions. And so we just have to have you back just to talk about more stuff that you've done. But you all, we ran over an hour, but it was worth it. And I want you all I'm going to put Fred's contact information so you all know how to reach out to him so you can find out how to use the writings that he's done, and you can reach out to Fred and find out about his work. But he made so many good points that I don't have to say a whole lot. So I'm going to end the way I always end. It doesn't matter what time of day it is that you're watching this. It doesn't matter if it's in the morning, if it's in the evening. It doesn't matter if it's the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour. It doesn't matter at all. If the day is not going the way you want it to, stop right now and reset it. That's your choice. Only you have the power to do that. This is your life, your story. Every life is a story. Yours too. Your life, your story. Write yourself a great one. See you all again next time. Bye.